Through storytelling, sound frequency, and intention, we awaken the magic of spoken words. Our tool to create, transform, and shape the path ahead. Ancient wisdom says, we dream our world into existence. Welcome to Fireside Alchemy, a space for deep conversations and juicy realizations. I'm Sophia. Restate your story, reclaim your truth. The alchemy begins now. In today's episode, I'm joined by someone whose journey is nothing short of alchemical. True Khepra. From a past steeped in survival and streets to becoming a devoted father, an empowerment speaker, an author, an activist, especially for the youth, True brings a perspective that's as raw as it is refined. He speaks from lived experience, and whether or not you align with everything shared, what's clear is his commitment to truth, growth, and being in service. This conversation moves through shadow and light, from personal transformation to collective awakening. From prison consciousness, it's real, it's alive, and it's a powerful reminder that no path is too far gone to be reclaimed. Let's dive in. What was that pivotal moment in your life where you knew things had to change or there was something outside of yourself that was greater?
Yeah, wow. So those are two different questions for me. And so the two things that I would say pivotal moments for me is during a time when I was in the street selling drugs, hustling, living a life of crime, basically, I started to notice that the climate in the city was changing as the membership of the Bloods started to increase. And I want to first say this is no, how do I say, no slight on the Bloods because I have friends who are gang members. They're, like one of my best friends is actually a very high ranking member of the Bloods. But I started to see that the violence started to increase in a different way. There was a time where as long as you were not involved in any nonsense, so to speak, if you live in a life of crime, the consequences are going to be what they are. But I noticed that when the gang started to really spread and increase, it's more senseless violence started to happen. And so in that moment, I realized that I had to then make a decision, either become what was happening or I needed to start making an exit strategy because I was going to have to succumb to the same behavior and ways and actions. And although violence is necessary living the life that I was living, it's a part of it, I was never with the senseless stuff. So that was one thing. The other thing that's definitely like a no-brainer that I always mention is the birth of my daughter. So I have my Lanesia, who's my oldest. I had her when I was 19. And when I had her, I realized that if I continued to live the way I was living, I was either going to end up in jail or I was going to be dead. And I didn't want her to have the same experience I had, which is growing up without a dad, number one. And number two, observing my environment and seeing the girls and the women who didn't have father figures in their lives and seeing, and this is again, no judgment, but it's just an observation of my reality at the time, just seeing how they came out, not having that masculine presence in their lives. I didn't want that for this little girl, my daughter. And so,
Let me ask you a question. So
yeah,
that was, you only had that thought after she was actually born.
yes, right. Actually like holding her, holding her in my hands and looking at her. I always say when I mention this story, because it's a part of my transformation, that my love for her replaced the love that I didn't have for myself. And so that's when I was like, okay, you know what? I'm definitely going to leave the streets alone. But there's a process. At that time, I'm already, catching charges, delinquent juvenile. And so it wasn't an overnight process, obviously. But that's when I really started making the exit strategy and started actually making a plan. Like, okay, I need to go back to school. I needed to, have a career and so forth. So for me, that sparked it. The other thing now you mentioned the spiritual awakening. When I joined the Nation of Gods and Earths and was introduced to a concept, now I was 15, 16 years old at the time. I was introduced to a concept called knowledge itself. But you know what? Actually, before that, I have to mention when I was 12 years old, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And so that definitely planted the seed for me to even be receptive to the nation's teachings. And so that put me on the path of seeking wisdom and also seeking to be a better man. So I would say a combination of those three things: the senseless violence that I didn't want to be a part of, and the birth of my daughter, and being introduced to the concept of knowledge itself.
How did you even get into this community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have to mention two things. Number one, this is the 90s. And in the 90s, at that time, it was sort of, for lack of a better word, a fad or popular to have knowledge. You know, you had groups like Wu Tang, Brand Nubian, you know, Big Daddy Kane, who was a member of that. All the people that I'm mentioning are members of the nation. So you had members of the nation making music, and they're making mainstream music at that. You know, maybe not so mainstream, but you get what I'm saying. They were popular. Yeah. So it was sort of like a cool thing to be smart and to be a part of this nation. So that's one thing. The other thing, by divine fate, so I got sent to California. My mother sent me to California because you know, I was getting in trouble at a very young age. And so, but then I started getting in trouble in California. So they sent me back to New Jersey, where I'm from. And when I went to high school, in homeroom, they sat me next to a brother whose name is Dasu. Shout out to my brother Dasu, who was a member of the nation. And when they sat me next to him and I started to converse, and he had this knowledge and wisdom that I remember thinking to myself, where did he learn this from? You know, we're the same age, but he just had this like profound wisdom and education. And I knew that he didn't get it from school. And so when I started to inquire, like, well, where did you learn that from? Because we're the same age. And he was like, well, I'm a member of the Nation of Gods and Earths. And, you know, the black man's, you know, original origin is to be a supreme. And I'm just like, wow, you know, I'm just so amazed by this information. And I gravitated to it immediately. And it's interesting because back in the 80s, I was listening to music that had these types of references, and I was attracted to it. I just didn't know what it was. And so I just think that somehow, some way, I was divinely destined actually to receive this information because the seeds were planted way before I was actually now pursuing it on my own.
So, how old were you when you met this brother?
I want to say I was maybe 14, 15.
Okay. And then how would you say that it shaped you? Like, what was it that, what really sticks with you to this day? Are you still practicing? Where are you with that right now?
Yeah. So I'll answer the first part of the question. What it did for me is, so I always thought that I didn't like school. And so I connected that to I didn't like learning. But it wasn't that I didn't like learning. I just didn't like what school was teaching me. So when I was introduced to knowledge itself and this type of information, I realized, oh, I do like to learn. So that put me on a path to start reading books and becoming more studious. Although I was doing horrible in school, like I barely made it out of high school, I was, consuming all of this other type of information and wisdom and knowledge. So that's the first thing. And the way it molded me and shaped me, and still to this day, it gave me a purpose in life because there's things in there that it talks about how the original man, like this is one of the lessons, it talks about the original man, which is the black man, is the indigenous man. And as an indigenous man on the planet, we lived a certain way, and we had responsibilities. And part of that responsibilities is to be the best version of ourselves. Not in this language. I'm using this type of universal language so that everybody can understand, but it's not the same language. It also spoke about how my duty as a man is to be the leader of my family and leader of my community and to do righteous things, to think righteously. And so the way it molded and shaped me is it started to go against the mentality I had when I was in the streets. But it took some time. I don't want to make it seem like, oh, I had this knowledge of self, and then the next day I left the streets alone. No, it didn't work like that. It was a process. But that's how it molded and shaped me. And as far as to this day, I would say, the lessons that I've learned, they're still very, very a part of who I am. Although I may not be an active member of the nation. And what I mean by that is I no longer go to meetings. I no longer go to the monthly events, but it's still very a part of who I am. And by definition of how I live, I'm still a member, but maybe not an active member. And since then, I've opened up my mind to other forms of teachings. And, I'm just a seeker of wisdom. I see the Buddha in the background. Mm-hmm. So, I love Buddhism. While some people from the nation may not appreciate other types of information, I'm the type of man that does. And I'm not speaking, let me just say this, I'm not speaking for the whole nation. I'm not speaking for everybody in the nation. I'm just saying, speaking from my experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to add this. The identification piece also was huge because at the time I identified as somebody from the streets. Like I was raised around gangsters and hustlers. So that's who I identified with and how I saw myself being. Mm-hmm. And what the knowledge of self did and being around these strong men, upright men, men with wisdom and men that were striving to do something in the community. I then started to identify myself with them and wanting to be more like that and wanting to be more like other historical figures, like Malcolm X and other great people in history, so that was another thing that the lessons did for me.
Have you given any thought to how different religious or powerful communities, even such as this, how it creates division to a certain degree? You know what? I'm not even going to play it down. It does. Like any kind of labels, any type of borders, even such as the United States. People are ready to die for their country. But you know what? What about the oneness? What about that we are connected to each other? Mm-hmm. We get trapped in the duality of life, of right or wrong, bad or good. It's all of these paradoxes that essentially is the oneness. It's the same coin. Yeah. What do you think would have to open up and create more of that kind of universal acceptance?
I know for me, because I can speak from my experience and what it did for me. So I think that some people from the outside may look at me and think that I'm confused because 1 month I could be studying Kabbalah, another month I could be going to Hare Krishna meetings, another month I could be deep into Yoruba teachings. And so if you don't know me personally, you could be like, yo, True is all over the place. He's confused. But I'm definitely not confused. I just personally, boxes don't work for me. Labels don't work for me. And they never really did. It's just that in the moment, I'm just visiting a certain house of wisdom. And so what I learned is that for me to really learn to the fullest, I have to embody it to the fullest. So just being universal in my thinking and in my studies, I can see from abroad how they all are so similar. Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing that baffles me. And I strive to express that to some people who are in the boxes and have labels. And I also see why some people need that, mm-hmm. Because being this way, the way I live, and I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, but it takes a lot of self-governance, because one book doesn't tell me how to live. This is my book, by the way. I'm just using that as an example. like one book. So some people need that one doctrine. But I'm like this even with martial arts. Like, I practice martial arts, and some people swear by Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the best. Some people swear it just by boxing. That's all. For me, I'm like, yo, they all have a place. I carry knives. I shoot guns. I grapple. They all have a place. So I'm probably the wrong one to ask because I'm universal in my thinking. So I'm very similar to you. I saw it in my own community. As we're striving to empower the community, I saw the Sunni Muslims beefing with the members of the nation who are also Muslims. I saw the Nation of Islam and the Nation of Gods and Earths having a conflict because, but I saw the Christians beefing with the Muslims, so I just think that I agree with you. I think it does cause some division, but I also think that some people just need the boxes to keep them contained. Well, boxes don't work for me, though. Labels don't work for me.
I'll share my experience. And growing up as a Jehovah's Witness is essentially...
Whoa! That's different.
Yeah. So there was a lot of unlearning to do. And to fully accept myself and who I am, all my green witchiness and esoteric occultism, seeker of wisdom, very connected to earth wisdom, indigenous cultures and ways of life, how they demonstrate the oneness and connection with animals and nature is a very strong resonance for me. What I learned was accepting myself. In order for me to be a good Jehovah's Witness, I had to cut off parts of myself. And on the flip side of that, I then had to let go of the box. And it was scary to allow myself to expand because of all of the indoctrinated ways that label good, bad, wrong. And those were parts of myself that I had to deny, Mm-hmm. And so it felt safe at first to be in that box. I remember it literally, I could remember the fear in my stomach of thinking about looking at something occult-like or outside of the publications that we had. So I tend to think that it's scary. It's safe to be in the comfortable, and that's all it is. And the way we do one thing is the way we do all things. So if we're comfortable in this religious box, most likely you'll be able to observe a person's life, or more on the more empowerment side, to observe our own life, to see where we're also practicing that same pattern of being afraid to step out and try something new and expand our mind and knowledge of self and all that's around us. Yeah.
One thing I did stop doing, I used to debate a lot. I used to debate with a lot of people in the boxes, I'll say, for lack of a better word. And when I say that, please, I don't want anybody to take that any judgmental, because that's not me anymore. But I no longer do that. I praise anyone that is finding their way to be a better person on the planet. And so whatever a person embraces, cool. All that I always ask is don't come at me sideways, because that part of me is still here. But I just choose not to do that because I think debating is at this stage of my life, I think is senseless and doesn't make sense. I don't mind having an intellectual conversation where we can have differences and you want to understand me more, and I don't mind being challenged, but it just has to be mutually beneficial in some way. Not, because I feel like I definitely was egotistical with information at one point in time. And I'm no longer that person. Yeah.
I almost think that is a process of the journey. Everyone goes through that. One is now we have knowledge, we think we know something. And we do. We know something different than what we used to know. But we don't know. There's so much more that we don't know. And then we also get excited. We're enthusiastic. We want to share the knowledge.
And
we want to
passionate.
argue. Yes. And we want to argue people down. Like, no. This opened my life. This changed my life. I want it for you too. So
Right.
it's all of these different phases and stages of our awakening. Development. Yes. So I wanted to go back to, that first step when you're holding your daughter and bringing also in the thought of joining the Bloods, not wanting to do that. Also reflecting on your type of lifestyle. You want more for your daughter. What did you have to do? Can't go back. Like, did you have moments where like, oh, fuck it. Like, I can just do this and I can do it over here like this. And, you can still tote the line. Was there a moment of that? Like, what were those inner dialogues?
Definitely wasn't an overnight thing. Like, I would be in college during the day and then selling drugs at night.
Why was it school?
Yeah, definitely
was the
part of
answer
the
for
answer.
you?
It wasn't the answer.
Part of
it. Only because I was selling drugs to the word that, I don't want to overthink it, but the word that's coming to my mind is to enhance my economic stability. I was based for money. And so I saw that I came to the conclusion, okay, why am I hustling? Why am I selling drugs? I'm doing it for money, right? And I had jobs. Like, I worked at a warehouse. I always kept little jobs. And I just realized that to get a decent wage, that you had to have a degree. You had to have, at that time, that was my only way. If you wanted to make a significant, a decent amount of money, then the only way was through an education. So I started to basically, do some self-reflecting. Why am I doing these things? And so I would have moments like you said about the internal dialogue. Like, there was a time when I went on a strong arm robbery. Right, all of this was a long time ago. Right, this was stuff that I left the streets alone when I was 26. I'm 45 now, so I could talk about this stuff. I went on a strong arm robbery, and when my crew and I were back at the safe house, sort of celebrating and enjoying the spoils of our robberies. I had a moment where I was sitting back. It was like I had two outer body experiences in my life. That was one of them. The other time I was meditating. So that was one of them. I remember sitting back, and my crew was laughing, smoking, drinking, looking at the jewelry and the money and everything. And I remember just feeling like, nah, this ain't it. This ain't it. This is not what I want to do. We should not be having fun. So guilt started to kick in for the things that I was doing at the time. And so I would say that somehow, some way, as I started to get knowledge of self, and I think that's why, because I was playing both sides of the fence. And those two minds, the hustler and the quote unquote conscious, are now battling. So it was a battle of who was going to win. And fortunately, the conscious side, and I'm not perfect, right? But I'm definitely not living a life of crime either. But the conscious won. So there was a lot of internal battles. There was a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, and not from the outside, really from me. As I say, when you know better, you do better. And so the information, one of the key words in information is form, right? Formation. It started formulating this other aspect of me, that the things that I was doing just no longer became acceptable. Now, I don't know what made me different, because I had other friends that was exposed to the knowledge, and they were like, whatever. They had the information, they had the name, because when you join the nation, you get a name. They was exposed to it, but it didn't really change a lot of them like it did me. I don't know what it is about me. It just had a very profound effect. I think too, like my natural personality, I can be an extreme person. And so I think that that was also part of it. Like when I dive in, positive or negative, I am in. And so I think that might be a part of it as well. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of dialogues, a lot of internal conflicts and battles. And even when I became quote unquote conscious, there was still some internal battles because now I'm on this side of the fence, but there were certain things about me that I suppressed, because I became extreme. Like there was a time I stopped listening to rap, you know what I'm saying? Because of the messages, and definitely a lot of the rap music has horrible messages, so there was certain, even like, I don't want to get vulgar in any way, but even physical desires that I suppressed because it's not righteous. And so that would also cause some internal conflict. Mm-hmm. So now at this stage of my life, I believe, I'm still growing and evolving, but I get it now. It's a dance. It's all a dance. And so I'm in a place where everything, all aspects of who I am are more in harmony. Life is a symphony.
I'm curious to know where life is expanding you right now. Where are you in that place of growth, that uncomfortable feeling of coming out of a comfort zone in a certain
question.
area?
I appreciate that question. Well, number one, being at this age, I'm reflecting on retirement more and seeing how ill prepared. Like it's scary for me. It's scary thinking about like, wow, I am not prepared at all, and feeling like I should be. Also, part of my self-discovery and finding my purpose and mission in life has took a lot of time, a lot of experiences, a lot of failing. And I have older children, I have young children. So managing all of that stuff, it's just very challenging. Being a married man and striving to satisfy all of my roles and responsibilities without losing myself. Because I realized that even some of the choices I've made in the past were rooted in fear. And now looking at that and realizing that those weren't the best choices for me. They were rooted in whether it was people pleasing or sacrificing who I am to do quote unquote the right thing, but it wasn't necessarily the right thing for me. But it was the righteous thing. It wasn't wrong, but it wasn't right for me. So I'm battling a lot of that stuff and the demand on my time. And so also still having to work a lot while striving to build my own thing. So those are stages where it's really challenging. And even like my new position, because I have a job, I also have a 9 to 5, and embracing that journey and the lessons that's coming with that and evolving into that and juggling that with my purpose. And then we're also needing to make money and seeing that collide and clash a lot. Man, it's a lot of life stuff. However, I am at a place though where I recognize and realize not to be positive or not sound like a guru or anything like that everything truly is for my benefit. And I have to remind myself of that because I have evidence. I've lived long enough now and been through some stuff where I can definitely like connect the dots. And so that's what gives me some peace during the challenging moments right now, that, okay, this is a part of my journey. But I struggle with it because me being someone who's not religious, I've always struggled with this concept of my path is already laid out, or, there's like a divine plan, right? And so, but I'm realizing that, there's some truth to that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm again, right? Like you said earlier, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So these are some of the things that I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna shut up and go with the flow and do my best.
I struggled with that. And even from time to time, be just fucking annoyed with it. But it's less and less. I really feel like I'm at this place now where I'm like, it's the surrender, it's the alignment. That's what I'm finding. The more I would push, the more I had struggle. We're in a society where it's like goals, New Year's resolutions, but it's such a fine line. Again, holding that coin, it's both sides, holding both the masculine and feminine at the same time. Of creativity, doing and being, listening for the inspiration, and then acting on the guided information and alignment. That has reduced my level of intensity of my stress and self-induced anxiety. Because of
you said that, I was going to say, I didn't want to cut you. Also, what I've struggled with is trusting the process. And I think because from in my younger years, and maybe it was happening, I just didn't know it. A lot of it was me. Like a lot of it, like I had to work so hard to develop myself, to get where I am. Like I barely made it out of high school. I ended up graduating top 10 in college. You know what I'm saying? But I worked so hard. You know what I mean? A lot of the things, like even like I work out, I have these little muscles that people admire. But I grew up as a skinny, like I didn't have great genetics, so I'm just so used to working hard. And when you work hard, I have gotten used to that. Okay, I know if I work hard, I get results. But then all of a sudden, I got to this place where working hard was just not enough. And a part of it was just letting go. So it's weird. So and I battle with that because I know working hard. I know push, fight. You know what I mean? That's what I know. That's what I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I'm glad. I'm grateful. Thank you. Yeah. And so, but now life has just shown me otherwise. It's just like, it's almost like embracing the feminine aspect of things. Like, no, you're gonna fall back. I'm gonna force you because no matter how hard you try, like that. And it's interesting you say that because I was just telling somebody, like, man, I don't know what happened, but there was a time where I felt like anything I touched turned to gold. Like I was the man on the block, and not to live in the past, right? But it's like I have evidence. But then all of a sudden, like things just weren't working out, and no matter how hard I tried. So it's just, yeah. So I'm learning more and more now. I think or being forced to learn, I should say. Like, bro, you got to let go and trust the process.
And you know what, True? This is such a poignant moment because everyone that I talk to, friends, people that I just meet, they're experiencing the same thing. I sense and feel it is a part of the collective saying, you know what? Those who have come for a certain reason, it's like that program is being activated now. We're being called to take the responsibility, to take that role that we agreed to when we came into this earth school. And it is time now. It requires us to go through more fire. It's the refining process. The old way of refining metal was putting it in fire. And what that would do, it would create a dross and it would float the impurities from the gold, from the silver, whatever the metal was. It would float up. They would skim it off and they would keep it in there until no more dross came off. And so I likened that. I learned that as a Jehovah's Witness in our Bible studies. I was a student back then. I had a relationship that they said that I couldn't have because I was disfellowshipped. They excommunicated me out. But that scripture stuck with me because that metaphor is just very powerful. It popped back up in life in as I reflect, as I go through this same thing. I almost feel like I'm coming through that right now. Like everything is good and then nothing works anymore. And you're like, why am I having to sit down? Why am I having to have several seats for a long time? My car, like I can get work, I consult, I do all kinds of things. But for whatever reason, nothing was aligning. At this point, I don't have a car. In fact, it was repossessed about 9 months ago. I remember when I was living in Asheville and the way I got that car, it was divinely orchestrated. I mean, there are so many synchronicities to that. It was delivered to me. It was crazy. And now it's like, bye-bye, because it's all impermanence. There's nothing.
And so
that
I'm at a
lasts
place
forever.
now where I now acknowledge that it's all divine. You know, I can't say receiving the car was divine, but then when the car is repossessed, say that's not divine. So I'm at a place where, it's all divine. This part is just not my preference, or this part I just don't like. But somehow, some way, you know, but it's not. How do I say? It's not like I'm still active. I realize that you still have to have your antenna up and say, okay, what's the data here? What's going on? What am I being taught? And maybe the lesson comes later. I don't know. But my antenna is still always up, But yeah, I'm just at a place where it's all for my benefit.
And that's the medicine. When we keep our awareness open to receiving what is here for me. And I even asked that question. I'm like, okay, let me just stop for a minute and look around and say, what does this situation have for me? What is the lesson that I need to get that apparently I haven't got up until this point?
Like, even with
so
me,
here
right?
It is
So
again.
I had a nicer car than what I have now. And so I realized that, wow, I didn't know I had an attachment to material things until I lost it. Yeah. Now, I still have a car and I'm grateful for that. But I realized, like, wow, like I was bothered so much by the fact that I'm not driving the car that I want to drive. And I'm now driving the car that I need to drive, so to speak. And the how that triggers me, I was like, oh, that's the lesson. Maybe that's why I don't have the other car anymore. You know what I'm saying? To learn this. Because I didn't realize I had that attachment. So it's just interesting how life unfolds if your antenna's up.
And sir, we have a certain capacity with certain experiences more easily to be kind of excited about what the lesson is. Like, now it's more like a curiosity to like, oh shit, something within me attracted that. So now it's this curiosity, this problem solve, but it's more like the awareness of, and it's not even a figuring it out anymore. I just know it's going to come, and I ask the questions that are more open-ended that support me being able to receive the lesson at hand.
Yes, exactly. And for me, it's empowering because there's no victimhood. There's no evil spirit or demonic being or any of that stuff doing it to me. No, this is somehow, some way, this is a reflection of me. Like, I honestly believe that. And so it's empowering. For me, it's empowering.
And the way I have been looking at life lately, which aligns with what you were saying, is if everything is, I can't pick and choose. If everything is for my highest good, I can't pick and choose. And with that, now I start looking at it because I work with cards because it's fun. I'm very tangible and I love play. And the cards are a way to play with different perspectives of my present energy. It almost like encapsulates, it snapshots my present energy through the cards, and that's fun to me. So I look at life as a living oracle. Everything is, it's math. Everything, the timing, the sacred geometry, the line, because how can things line up exactly with the synchronicities exactly, like so far out? It's
And
mind
I'll add,
blowing.
to me too, life is art. It's a masterpiece. You know what I mean? So we're a masterpiece in the present, and then it's always evolving into something else. Yeah, and what I think about, like, you were a
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witness, and now you're into esoteric information, and you enjoy the cards. Like, for me, that's not a coincidence. Like, that is in you for a reason. And so, similar to you, I used to sort of deny certain aspects of myself. Especially because, like, for example, Buddhism, which I love. I would think, like, well, that's, that was, it started in India. That's some Asian stuff. I'm a black man. That's their stuff. But I was still attracted to it and gravitated towards it. And then I realized, like, yo, it ain't nobody's stuff. That's my stuff too. If it wasn't mine, then I wouldn't be attracted to it. I wouldn't desire it. I wouldn't enjoy it. And so, and that's, for me, I think that that's something that we have to also connect with. It's like who we are. And I think that somebody, again, with the boxes and the labels and society, so many of us, and I know this, including myself, but I also know this from just interacting with people. So many of us are just scared to be who we are because of what people may think or say, or fear, or the boxes and whatnot. And again, if you want to be in a box and that's what makes you feel good, because that's who you are destined to be. Right? If that makes you feel good, that's who you are. I'm speaking to the fact that there's some people who don't want to be in a box, but they're scared to get out. Yeah, and so I'm just also at a place too, and I remember
Yeah.
hearing older people talk about, like, the older you get, the less you, like, man, you don't really care about what people think. Yeah, I do think though that I do have a
Yeah.
responsibility to lead by example, and so I should care about, like, what my family thinks and what my community thinks to a degree. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't shackle me, but I should also be like, it should also, in a way, create some checks and balances, like, because I'm careful with that, because I teach freedom, and living who you are, but, like, I think a teenager should care what his parents think about him or her, not to the point where it's stifling again or creates shackles, but you should be like, you know what? Like, for example, my daughter in Zinga, she went on vacation. She's not here. She's on vacation. Right before she left, I was like, yo, remember what family you represent, what legacy you come from. Because I know she's gonna be with her people and having fun and all that, all good. I was there, but I was like, yo, just remember who you are. Your name is Nzinga, and Nzinga's an African warrior. So I do feel like I want to say that too. It's like, you should care. You should care what people think to a degree, but it's just shouldn't create shackles and, like, some, I don't know, some internal conflict, unless it's destructive.
I mean, I think we should care about people
Yeah, sure.
lovingly.
I
I don't know. I'm
appreciate
gonna have to
that.
think
Yeah, I
about
get it.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Nope,
and I
I
can
can't.
understand why
It's not
that
coming.
would probably
Never mind.
cause, not confusion for you, but maybe make you want to think of, especially because you came from a Jehovah Witness background. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. I
Maybe.
get it. So, because I'm pretty sure your family's like, yo, you're shaming us. You're doing this. You're doing that. But what I would say is,
Right, right,
well,
right.
if what you're doing is not destructive, although I just, and that's what I'm speaking to. Like, for example, I'm not a Christian, right? But
Okay.
one of my daughters is goes
Yeah.
to Bible class. So, for me, it's like, yo,
Mm.
That's not destructive. That's if that makes you a better person, cool. I'm also like, yo, fam, I don't know, this is gonna be like an outrageous example, but it's like, okay, you're stripping, right? Your dad taught you to respect yourself, right? And this may have come across as a judgment to you, but I taught you to respect. I taught you that you're a black woman, and as a black woman, your nature is to be a queen. You know what I mean? And so, like, yo, your dad's in your life. Why are you acting in that behavior? Or, you have other opportunities. So that's that. But I get it. There's a thin line with judgment and also, expressing yourself.
I I think you made it clear. I think it is more about being destructive
Mm-hmm.
or that sort of thing. So if that's more of like kind of the verbiage or the intention behind it,
Yeah, and like something I appreciate about
I
my mother,
can
right?
I
So
resonate with that.
I'm Dominican, so I was born Catholic, whatever that means, and my mother doesn't really understand what I represent and what I'm a part of. I don't celebrate holidays and stuff like
Mm.
that, and but she's just like, yo, it made him a better man. You know what I mean? So she calls it the black religion. That's what she calls it. You know what I'm saying? She's like, yo, that black religion stuff made him a better man. So whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like that's. So I appreciate my mom for being like that too. I think that part of the reason I am the way I am is because although I knew I had a Catholicism background and I went to church and all of that, my mother was more so like, bro, like, well, similar to me. What makes you a better person? Rock out. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I love that you recognize that because that was the first thing that came to mind when you said that that was how your mom responded. I was like, that's why it allowed you to be as open as you are. And I
Mm.
call that mental agility, you know? Like you have the flexibility and the openness to make decisions with authentic self and to also base it
And I tell
on
you,
your
I
new
tried to be in
truths.
the box. Like I tried all the boxes. I tried all the labels. They just don't work out. I don't know what it is about me. Yeah, I love I don't know, just love
Yeah.
wisdom.
Speaking of which, what is your message when you go speak to the
Yeah.
youth correctional facilities or
That
you speak to the
that I
youth?
would say that they don't have to be a byproduct of their environment. That I understand that although they may not be experiencing love, I tell them, although I don't know you, that's one of my first one. Although I don't know you and you don't know me, I want you to know that I love you. Because a lot of them, including myself when I
Mm.
was young, a lot of that acting out is just like a lack of love. Somewhere, and then it translates to lack of love of self. And so my main message for the youth is that you don't have to be a
Mhm.
byproduct of your environment. And also that I get it. I get it that you were born with a lot of lack of resources. I get it. You were probably born in a dysfunctional family. I get it that the community you come from, the education is whack. I get it. But it's still your responsibility to empower yourself and then eventually empower your community. And then I give them access to some insights and tools on how they can do that, and also give them a little bit about my story so
Mm.
that they can know like a real example of someone who did it, and I'm still growing and evolving, and then also
Mhm.
to become a positive representation of masculinity, because I think that that's something that's lacking in the community. Um, and that's something that benefited me is that I was, even though my father wasn't consistent in my life, my father and I are cool now. But the fact that I had some positive, solid men who put me under their wing is definitely part of the reason that I am the person that I am today.
Wow, to start off your engagement
Yeah.
with you loving them from a complete stranger and to also be masculine in a positive way to them, how do you think they receive that?
It's a great question.
Is
There's
that
normally a lot of them in there, and I don't know. But what I can tell you from experience, I've had young men cry, and then when I hug them, they're sort of like, you can tell they're like really like letting go. A lot of times they weren't told that they
Mm.
were loved. And so, and I'm like one of those, I'm not one of those soft, masculine, like, men. I would say I'm like very much about like, yo, bro, you gotta be strong, you gotta be a warrior, and I love you. I wanted to show them like the full spectrum of masculinity, and it's okay to love, and that's something new for me as well. Um, and when I say new, I'm saying like newer, just embracing that part of me, and also recognizing that it's okay to cry. That's something you hear a lot now, but I have no shame in crying. Like I'll cry now. I'll cry. I'll cry on the block. You know what I mean? Because I still go back to the hood sometimes. And so I think that for most of them though, it may not land because it's like, bro, they don't know me, and a lot of them are so hard, have a hard exterior. I know I did at that age, but I think maybe at the very least, I like to use this term. You've heard me use it in this conversation. Planted a seed of love, and that they could be loved, and who knows? You know what I'm saying? But I get it. A lot of them, growing up and like the good thing, like I had my mom, and my mom was responsible. My mom worked at a factory, but I have friends who father wasn't in their lives. Mother was on drugs. One of my best friends, Maruki, his mother was on crack. She rest in peace. She's dead. His father was killed, when he was 4 years old. I mean, so man, just the community I come from, there's a lot of pain. It's a lot of pain.
How connected are you to the people, or
My day
maybe
ones,
your street family
very
even,
connected.
or
I was in the hood today. I was literally
Mhm.
on the block. I took a picture, 10th Ave and 23rd. I was in the hood today. I'm very still connected. It's tough for me to not be connected. I struggle with that. I struggle with not being connected to where I'm from. I don't know what it is. Like I know some people, they change and they never go back, but yeah, I don't know. I struggle with that. But I'm very
Uh,
well connected with and it's some people, like you hear like stories of like men who change their lives, and the people that they grew up with think that they're corny or hate on them. My brothers, man, protect me. Yeah, because they celebrate me for real. Like they celebrate, what I represent.
mm,
They celebrate the fact that one of their own made it out, so to speak. They celebrate the fact that one of their own took the
mm,
initiative and put in the hard work to transform. But I have to say that I've given back. I've spoke with gang members. I did clothing drives. So I think that also too, there isn't just this transformation. There's also like work that I've done to give back. And so I think maybe all of that. But I'm where I'm from, 10th Avenue, 23rd, in Patterson, New Jersey. I'm celebrated, and and they tell me, like they tell me, So yeah, I don't know what all this people talk about, all of this hate. Yeah, I changed my life, and they hating on me. I just didn't receive that. I get nothing but love. And if there is hate, they ain't saying it in front of me or in
I-
front of them. It's to the point they love me so much that if I'm like,
it
yo,
sounds
yo, I'm in the hood. I'm gonna pass through. They like, nah, not today, True. The block is hot. Or there was a shooting yesterday. I don't think it's a good time, True.
mm,
You know what I mean? So, or like I'll tell you, like I remember when I was
mm,
transforming my life, when I was in the process of, like at one time I had just a serious addiction to alcohol and weed and stuff like that. And when I was changing, I remember one time I was on the block and somebody passed me a blunt, and I was like, nah, I'm good. Like I'm good. And somebody else yelled at the other person, like, yo, man, what's wrong with you, man? You know, True trying to stop smoking. You know what I'm saying? Why would you pass it to him? Meanwhile, they're smoking, but they're mad at the other person for accidentally passing it to me. So I don't know, man. I love my brothers, you know what I'm saying? And I shout them out all the
uh,
time. 10th Avenue, 23rd, you already know what it is. But yeah, they just, I don't know. They protect me, they celebrate me. So when they tell me don't pass, yo, not true, not today. I'm just like, all right, thank you. Yo, love you,
it
bro.
sounds
Peace.
like that speaks more to who you
Thank
are,
you.
and how you show up, you know, how
Appreciate that.
they respond to you and that love that they have for you. Yeah.
Yeah,
You mentioned none of us are
yeah,
stuck. How does one even get to
yeah.
that
That's
mindset
powerful. I would
shift?
say the first thing is you got to expose yourself to new environments. And when I say new environment, I mean not only your physical space,
Mm.
but also people and new information. Because what that does is eventually it starts to influence the internal environment. We spoke about my pathway to awakening. I was exposed to new information. And so that new information gave me different perspectives. And so I started to see different. So now it's just a matter of access, accessing or seeing how I can become that. And I wanted to say you're not stuck, and I said it specifically like that because me coming from that community, a lot of us do feel stuck. A lot of us do actually think that we're stuck. And so we don't take certain actions to quote unquote unstuck ourselves, or really is just to manifest whatever desires we have because we think that we're stuck. And a lot of it has to do with also the outside perspective that has been, I don't want to say forced on us, but the labels that people that come from where I come from have been given. These labels. I was affected by it too. Definitely like, yo, as cliche as it sounds, teachers told me that I wouldn't amount to nothing. And so when you hear that, my mother unfortunately was verbally abusive, and then I understand that she went through a whole trauma. I love my mom. My mom knows my story. She hears me speak. So but she was harsh with her words. So when you're in your house, you're hearing you ain't. School's telling you you ain't. Your environment is kind of like sort of mirroring that also. When you read textbooks in schools and all you learn is that you were a slave and you didn't contribute nothing to the world and society, you start to really believe that stuff. And so the only way to not believe that stuff is to be exposed to more information. And so, and then, but ultimately, what it boils down to eventually, though, is taking action, taking different actions. But I just think that for me, I have to be honest about my path. And my path came with being exposed to different things. And then those different things made me feel like, okay, maybe I can take certain actions. And it was scary. And I wasn't sure if I can do it. But let me try and let me strive, as we like to say. We say trying leads to failure, so we strive. Let me strive. And so I think that that's the first thing that
Mm-hmm.
someone has to do. Yeah.
I like strive. I've replaced
I
try
like
with
that. I like practice
practice.
too.
Yeah, strive is still, it sounds like a struggle still. I don't know. I go into etymology of
Yeah, I
words,
pause too. Like, you know what I mean?
like,
'Cause I think
yeah,
words are important. And so I strive to be very strategic and meaningful with the words that I'm using for sure.
there's a saying, words are powerful. Words
Mm-hmm.
create the spell for the magic. So everything we say, we're
Yeah,
essentially
yeah,
creating.
yeah.
Re-
If you feel stuck in your life, especially in this day and time, there's more than enough information out there that you just have to think about what is it that you want
Mhm.
to strive for, or what is it that you want to become and manifest. And then once you get exposed to that awareness, then there's also self reflection. So just but everything's in steps, of course. But ultimately, you have to take the action, and it's all about your choices.
Yeah.
That's why it's called the power of choice. You are not stuck, because I had to be honest with myself. And yeah, I could blame my community, I could blame my economic status, but what I always say is my mother raised me right. Those were choices. Like, yeah, I lived on my block. I lived on the same block that I sold drugs on, and definitely the drugs were there. You know what I'm saying? So it made it easy to become that. But ultimately, I have to be honest. It was a choice.
It is. And it always is a choice. And that's radical responsibility, I like to call it, because that's the sovereignty
Yeah, yeah. And,
that
and,
we
and I
all
think that the
have.
sooner
with
that we come to that conclusion. It's funny you mentioned radical responsibility. I love that. When I speak to the youth, I have an acronym that I came up with. It's called RACS, and it's like I have a whole speech behind it. And so the R stands for responsibility. The A stands for action accountability. The C stands for clarity of purpose. The K stands for keeping your commitments. And then the S stands for self development. And so, because that's sort of the formula that I practice that made me unstuck, is, eventually you got to say, like, you know what? Yeah, none of this is my fault. I'm talking about when you're young, because remember, that's like my demographic. None of this is my fault. I was born into this family. I was born on this block, raised on this block. But now that I can think independently and do for self, it is my responsibility. And so I think that that's key. And that's where the power is, to just be like, yeah, damn, I inherited this mess. And it's still up to me.
I remember being at a point in my life where I had to accept that I didn't want to make certain decisions because I was afraid to fail. And then if I failed, it would be on me. And that frightened me. I was judging myself, and also feeling not worthy, but also
What's amazing
keeping
about
that
this
victim
conversation?
mentality. But also
What's amazing
keeping
about
that
this
victim
conversation?
mentality.
Because here, I'm a man, you're a woman. You're from the West, I'm from the East. Although I did live in the West. Um, there's so many similarities. Because I've experienced that. And for me, I almost want to say that it's tougher because and I'm not saying that it is, but I think it is, because there's this pressure as a man that the man is the leader. And so as the leader, I've been scared and still fearful of certain things because I'm like, yo, it all falls on me. And so there's a lot of pressure, but I appreciate you sharing that though, because I almost find freedom in knowing that you too have felt the same. So now it's not just a man thing. Oh, okay. This is a mental thing that many of us have go through and have to conquer. So thank you for sharing that. You don't even know you did something for me by sharing that.
That's beautiful. And thank you for sharing that vulnerability. Every single ingredient that makes up every single person. So to have conversations and to hear their perspective on where they're coming from and how they see the world and how we experience the same things in life. We all have the same fears.
Okay.
So
This was fun.
my last three questions. These are questions that will be
Okay.
at the end of every conversation. One, what are you dreaming the world to be? So, indigenous wisdom teaches us that not only is this a dream, but we dream the world into existence collectively and the visions and the images that we hold. Because that's the power that we are. We're created in the image of the divine. We are creating constantly.
I'm dreaming this world to be a world where everyone is striving now. Let's go. Let's get over striving. Everybody's being the best versions of themselves.
Beautiful. So most people like to say, what's the wisdom you would tell your younger self? But I want to ask, what is your inner child telling you
That's
today?
a deep question. That's a very deep question that I've never been asked before. I love that. Without overthinking and just really looking in and asking my inner child, I would say, don't forget to play. like
love
I'm thinking
it.
about like
Yes.
let me think of something more profound, but then when I just shut that up, that's probably ego. It's just don't forget to play, bro. And I've
Mm-hmm.
because life has been so challenging lately, and I have so many goals and so many things that I'm working on that I'm forgetting to play. And like literally, even with my own two small children and my grandson, like I'm forgetting to play. And I was reminded of that. It's funny you asked me this question because I took Aaliyah, who's 7, and my grandson Zen, who's 4. Yeah, Zen is 4, on a walk. And I took him to the park, and then we went on a walk. And it's because I'm hurt. Because I'm hurt, right? I'm forced to slow down. And so I took him on a walk, and I'm just like, this was a good experience. Seeing them play, and seeing them interact. And Zen was like, because we were in nature, I like to be in nature. And Zen was like, I'm scared of the forest. And I'm like, Zen, you're a man. He was like, yeah, you're right, right? And so I was just like, wow, I need to do more of this, And so, but I say that, but then like tomorrow, I'm just looking at my to-do list and my plans and my goals and everything I want to do. So don't forget to play True.
One of the reflections that I've had in the nuances of new reprogramming is that the awareness in and of itself, before we can necessarily do anything about it, that already begins the momentum of that awareness. So then when I can remind myself at shorter intervals to play, then it's becoming more vivid in my consciousness. And so we don't have to do anything. The doing is going to come because of the inspiration of the opening and that
Indeed.
intention that you
Love
set
that.
from that awareness. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not just because he's a man, True. Zen, Zen, we are one with nature. This is where you came from. This is called Mother Earth. We respect it like a mother who gives us
It's
nourishment.
funny you say, as a matter of
Come
fact,
on, man.
earlier, word to everything. I thought to myself, like, damn, when he said he was scared, I should have asked for, what are you scared of? There's probably something I could have given him to, instead of, yo, you're a man, he's just like, all right. Like, so I learned that. I was like, wow, I should have asked, oh, okay. It's okay to be scared. What are you scared of? And so it's interesting you said that. So yeah, my natural reaction is just, yo, don't be scared.
And you know what? That's our programming. Like when we like default into stuff, when we're like, what? Why did I even say that? That's not even me anymore.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Um, that even questioning your reflection and those questions,
Hmm.
that is the basis of shadow work. That is the basis
Indeed.
of knowledge of self. Is to be able to ask the questions that fear is causing or
Mhm.
rising up
Yeah. That,
within us.
a
Within
key,
us.
a huge key for me to grow in life is self reflection. Like questioning, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, right? I have my arrogant moments at times, and I need to check that. But just really questioning everything. So that was a moment where I questioned that response, and I was like, yeah, that wasn't the best response for him. I bet. And so I actually planned. I actually told his mother, my daughter, this week. I was like, yo, I'm taking him back to the forest. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, because I want to like almost like redeem myself. You know what I'm saying?
That is so beautiful. I fucking love that. And I feel like, when we have conversations with people that are our growth mindset, and we have like these little moments of like, oh, adjustment or shifting, and we get confirmation, it's just so beautiful to me because it's like this, that's the magic, the synchronicity of life and of living. And it makes me feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. This has been the process for me to get here right now. I mean, I started a podcast in like 2021, 2020, but it wasn't time for me. It was the same premise, asking the questions about the stories and about where your spiritual pivot point was, your conscious pivot point, because we're always on a path. Like you can see, and just from you sharing your story, I can see the breadcrumbs along the way, that it's like obvious why you are who you are, and like having who you've become because of those. Now that you've alchemized so much of that other outer layer stuff that you've been able to pull back and learn yourself. But this is, I feel, I know I'm recording. I don't know if I'm going to put this in or not, but I'm just sharing with you in the moment, is just appreciating this moment with you and having someone that I feel comfortable with. And I didn't, because I've had a lot of fear in doing what I'm doing, creating this, and asking people that I have felt, that is the thought of they're better than me, or they're further along than me, or they have this many followers, they're not gonna want to speak with me on an emerging podcast, or that I don't necessarily have a track record, or all of this that they are aware of, but people who know me know. And I've had some really amazing sacred yeses, just because of how I'm showing up as my authentic self, and my love and desire for connection and community.
I'm grateful too, and I'm honored.
So
And
grateful.
I tell you, I don't care about any of that stuff. Although I never met you in the flesh, and social media, it is what it is, and people somehow I know you're the real thing, and so I'm truly honored. And the thing too, don't take this the wrong way, but I believe in this so much that it could be anybody. It's not even about you. It's about, for me, about spreading. If I can spread a little positivity and shed some light, I'll do it with anybody who is willing and who honors me with the opportunity to invite me on their platform. I don't care how big or small or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, just to share this moment. And like, I truly, truly am passionate about this. So I don't care about none of that. But also though, I have seen in your light. And so, so that's another reason why I accepted. But I just want you to know that and the thing is too, I want to tell you that real people, you know what I learned? Because I get you, and I felt the same way in my own way. What I realized, like, in all areas, the people that are really about it, like, for example, fitness. If people who ain't really, really about the health and wellness of people may laugh at someone who can't do 5 push-ups, let's say. But people who are really about it, they're gonna salute you like, wow, yo, you're doing your best. Yo, keep at it. You know what I mean? So I just find that real people don't care about none of that stuff. So but I just want to tell you that the feeling is mutual, and
Agreed.
I'm truly, truly honored, and I'm glad and grateful that you haven't given up. I've seen you. I've seen you with the yoga. I've seen you with the old podcasts and the videos. I see it, and I don't know if the word is understand, but I get you. That's probably a better word. Like, I get you, even though I don't know you in the flesh and all
Yeah.
that.
There's a resonance
But
there.
thank you so
And
much.
I recognize resonance as an energy of a similar frequency. And so I can spot that. I can feel that. I don't have to meet someone in person. Okay. If your inner
I'm a
fire
fire sign. That's what's funny.
had a message for you, what would your inner fire say to you today?
My inner fire would say, don't allow me. So the fire is saying, don't allow me to be diminished by the external forces. Keep me lit. And I think that that's the inner fire, because I've experienced some challenges where definitely, not that the fire has been extinguished, because if the fire is extinguished, then I would cease to be. But definitely, like, has dimmed a little bit. And so I think the fire would tell me, like, bro, don't let none of that dim me, or diminish me. Keep me lit. Keep adding wood to this. Let's go. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Do you live by a certain mantra?
I do. If it is to be, it is up to me. Another one is one of my favorite African proverbs.
Wait. Say it again.
If it is to be, it is up to me.
Is that
You
true?
mean, did I say that, you mean, or is that true, the mantra?
Is that a true belief? Because I feel like you said something earlier that that's not really true. So
That
what
I have
does
to take
that mean to you?
responsibility for those things that I want to manifest in my life. And I cannot allow myself to be, again, similar to what I said about the fire, be disempowered by any other thing and have that make me believe that it's not possible. Because
Hey, it's Sophia. So, as you may have noticed, the conversation got cut off a little suddenly. We had some technical issues and didn't get to record the full wrap up together, but I didn't want to leave you hanging without taking a breath and sharing a few closing thoughts. This conversation with True touched on a lot of layers: family, legacy, personal accountability, and the weight of becoming who we really are. And while not everything said fully landed with me in the moment, I want to honor that we can hold complexity without needing immediate resolution. And one thing that really stayed with me was the moment True talked about telling his daughter to remember who she is and where she came from. I felt a pause. For those of us raised in systems that shaped our identity before we had language for it, like religion, for me, Jehovah's Witnesses, or family structures that didn't see us fully, that kind of statement just brings up a lot. It made me reflect on how we carry ancestral pride and inherited pain in the same body, and how part of our healing is choosing what we want to carry forward and what no longer defines us. That's part of this alchemy, letting what's said stir what it stirs, just holding space for it, even within ourselves. If something opened in you during this episode, a question, a memory, even a moment of discomfort, I'd love to hear it. I'm gathering listener questions for a follow-up Q&A with True, and I'd love to include your voice in that space. Thank you for sitting by the fire. If something sparked in you, share it with someone you love. To keep weaving these conversations, follow Fireside Alchemy and leave a review. You can find me on YouTube or wherever you tune in. Just search #Fireside Alchemy. That's with Sophia. Until next time, restate your story, reclaim your truth, and keep tending the flame.